Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're going to break with tradition here in Washington, D.C. and try to get started on time for a change. My name is Eric Olson, and I want to welcome you to this conference on U.S.-Mexico Security Cooperation, Pillar 4, Building Strong and Resilient Communities. My apologies. Thrilled to have you all here. I want to give a special welcome to our guests, some of which have flown in from El Paso and from Mexico City last night, braving bad weather and delayed flights. But thank you all for making the journey. Really looking forward to our time together. I want to thank also some colleagues that have been helping in organizing this event, especially Edgar Ruiz. I don't know, Edgar here yet? Edgar from the Council of State Governments is a partner with us in this project, focusing on Pillar 4 work. They've done, through the Council of State Governments, other activities on the West Coast. And so we want to thank him and the Council of State Governments for their support for this conference today. I just want to say a couple words before we get started and before I turn it over to my good friend and colleague Diana Negroponte, who will chair the first panel. We at the Mexico Institute have spent the last 3 years, maybe even more than that, researching, writing, studying, thinking about the security situation in Mexico. And I think oftentimes we could be accused maybe of focusing too much on the blood and guts of it and on the hard side of it, and we sometimes neglect to look more deeply at some of the social and economic factors that have contributed and played a role in the current violence in Mexico and a factor contributing to the growth of organized crime. So we were very happy, first of all, that both governments, the government of Mexico and the government of the United States, added or defined as one of the central parts of the strategy to combat organized crime this area of building resilient communities and looking at the social and economic dimensions of the security situation. And so we have decided to sort of take a step back and really try to focus a bit more of our energies and research and thinking on the economic and social factors. And that hence we organized this event to start that process. And I sincerely hope that this is not, a one-off type activity, but that's something that we will continue to focus on here at the Institute and with both governments in Mexico and the United States. Our plan this morning is to have 2 panels. One, as I say, chaired by Diana Negroponte, who I'll introduce in just a second. And that will provide us some of the perspectives of the governments, both the Office of the Presidency in Mexico, giving it a top priority for the Mexican government. We have 2 guests from the President's office. And then 2 people, colleagues from the U.S. government, INL at the State Department, Susan Snyder, and Kermit Moe from U.S. Agency for International Development, providing those perspectives. And I hope we have plenty of time to interact with them at the end. Diana is committed to giving us that time today. And then we'll move in the second panel after a brief break to hear more what I've called the view from the trenches. I hope you don't feel insulted by that, but we have wonderful people here from the El Paso, Ciudad Juarez area and somebody from the San Diego, Tijuana area to talk a little more from their perspective on the ground, what's happening, what's not happening, what are some of the dynamics at play there. So I'm thrilled that you all are here. I'm thrilled that our guests have come and agreed to participate, and I look forward to an excellent panel. Let me turn it over quickly now to Diana Negroponte, a fellow at the Brookings Institution, and also a member of the Mexico Institute's Advisory Board, has been a colleague on the 3 years I've been at the Mexico Institute, always pushing me to think about these things in a good way, Diana, and has actually traveled herself on numerous occasions to Ciudad Juarez and Tijuana to look more closely at some of these social and economic issues as well. So I'm delighted that you've joined us. Oh, I forgot to say, we had at the entrance at the table there a working paper that Diana has worked on for us that kind of lays out a broad scope, broad pictures, a broad picture of the whole Pillar 4 element, aspect of the strategy. Hope that you will take a look at it. We plan to finalize that in the next several weeks, but it's a good start and it provides a lot of useful information. So thank you, Diana, for that as well.
Eric, thank you very much, and welcome to all of you. For those at the back, we do have 3, 4, 5 seats here, up here in front if you prefer to come up. Thank you for coming today, this morning, to discuss, and I really want to involve you in the discussions on how the U.S. government might best support the Mexican government's commitment to addressing the underlying social causes of the violence. Mexico has had social programs for centuries. There's nothing new to Mexico's CEDESOL, DIF, Educación, MEP, and many other agencies which have been involved in social programs, including Oportunidades. But faced with the level of violence which we're now seeing, the challenge is, how do you bring these programs together so that they impact the families most affected by the drug-related violence? The scattered approach doesn't work when we come to the concentrated violence along the drug trafficking routes and along the border with the United States. So this morning, as we meet to discuss, I have 3 questions for you. How do you integrate within Mexican democracy the immediate demand of citizens for safety with the medium-term need to address the underlying social causes? Secondly, how do you mobilize Mexican citizens so that as a nation they address the scourge of violence which spreads now into extortion and petty kidnapping throughout the country? And specifically, and at the end, last year saw an experiment. It was an experiment designed by the 2 fine officials at the end of the table called Todos Somos Juárez. It integrated multiple Mexican agencies into a focused, dedicated effort in the city of Ciudad Juárez. What happens next? Where do we go from here? So we're going to start this morning with hearing from our Mexican colleagues who've come up from the President's office in Mexico City, and Adrián Obregón, with whom I met only 6 weeks ago. I went to trap her to come up here. Then I'm going to open it for questions. And after a short interlude of questions, we will then hear from the US side. So bear in mind when you're thinking of your questions, you are going to hear from USAID and from the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement. That is going to be the second half of the morning. But first, please, our Mexican guests. Have you decided which of you are going to go first? Enrique or Adrián?
We have already organized the
Very good. Adrián Obregón, whose biography you have in the packet that hopefully you picked up at the front. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for being interested in what's going on in Mexico. As Diana well introduced us, last year, both Enrique Betancourt and I were appointed to work in Ciudad Juárez in a strategy that includes both social and economic actions that might help overcome the situation that Ciudad Juárez was living. I don't know if we have the presentation. And we're going to start, we're going to introduce you to two programs that are called Todos Somos Juárez, which was the first experiment, as she said, about this type of programs. And then Convivir Mejor, which is what we learned from Ciudad Juárez and what we're trying to introduce to the whole country. Todos Somos Juárez was launched on February 17th of last year as an answer to the vicious circle that the city was involved in. This circle includes insecurity, and it's manifested by narco-traffic, homicides, kidnapping, extortions, and also it has a lack of, this insecurity leads to a lack of socioeconomic opportunities as unemployment, poverty, and lack of health and education opportunities. And also this leads to a lack of social cohesion, which is people do not trust in their neighbors, they do not trust in the community, and they also do not trust in the government. And they also have, this leads to antisocial behaviors that are manifested in alcoholism, in drug abuse, family violence, and gangs. What Todos Somos Juárez seeks to do is to address the causes and not just the effects that are the effects of violence and crime. And we try to work in a comprehensive way with both corrective and preventive actions in order to break this vicious circle. In this way, Todos Somos Juárez tries to work with all these problems. And but the main part of Todos Somos Juárez is that it involves the community in the development, in the implementation, and in the follow-up of the strategy. We have 6 citizen councils that are involved, in which we have community leaders, we have members from the local governments and also from the federal governments, in which they work in certain problems. So the main part of Todos Somos Juárez is the city community, and they work with the 3 levels of government. And within this, we have 160 policy actions in the program, and which they have specific goals, which they have to be fulfilled to December of last year. The main characteristics of Todos Somos Juárez is our community participation, the comprehensiveness of the program, and the coordination. Community participation is the key element of Todos Somos Juárez. When we arrived to Ciudad Juárez, what we heard from the community was, come, listen to us, listen to our problems, and listen to our solutions. We are the ones that are living this situation, so we are the ones that can give you the best view of what we have to do here in the city. And in these city councils, they participate in the design, the implementation, and supervision of the program. Also, the comprehensiveness of the problem includes that you need to do a whole set of actions that include not only the security actions, but also the economic development, the social development, health, education, and employment actions. And the coordination between the 3 levels of government, and also with co-responsibility with them and also with the community. These 160 policy actions are divided as follows, and they represent a historic federal investment in the city. This amount is around $330 million that have been spent in Ciudad Juarez from last year and also this year. They include from building schools, building hospitals, giving employment opportunities, building, paving streets, giving them electricity for their houses, the Programa Oportunidades, which is really important for poor people. And this includes coordinating, as has never been seen in Mexico, all these agencies, but not only the federal agency, but their counterparts from the municipal and the state government. If you need more information about this, I can give it to you later. We just wanted to tell you what we learned from Ciudad Juarez, which is the important part. What we learned in Ciudad Juarez is that the success of these strategies are based upon the leadership of the local governments, complemented by well-established federal governments. The local governments are the ones that know their situation. They just need support from the federal government. And it is really hard as federal government to go and work in a city without the companion of the local governments. So you need their support. It's a key element. Also, but government actions are not enough without community participation and the appropriation of the strategy. If the community do not agree with the actions that you're taking and do not support you, this is not gonna be a successful strategy. Also, a comprehensive approach to public policy for intervention is key to attend the complexities lying at the source of violence and crime within communities. It involves doing a lot of actions, not just about policing, but also going to the causes and to the roots of crime and violence. So you need to understand what is going on in the city and what is going on in the community in order to help them. Also, and really important, is that youth should not be seen as the problem. They are the key actors in providing solutions. We have in Ciudad Juarez a great bunch of people, of young people, that are seen like the main cause of the problem, because it is said that they do not work, that they do not study, so they are the ones that are going to the crime. But also they are the ones that know their solutions, and you have to listen to them, because sometimes as government officials, you believe that you have the answers, but they are the ones that have the answers for their own problem, and it is really important to hear to them in order to understand how to approach to them. Also, public policy is not enough. To be effective, it requires to concentrate efforts within a specific territory. For us, it was mandatory to go to the whole city. And it is really important to understand the potential of the policy actions. If you can target them in just a specific area, you're going to see that the effects are going to be better, and that all the resources that you're going to invest are going to be seen as much more effective than if you invest them in the whole city. Also, it is necessary to tackle violence through a strong hand, but also a social prevention approach. This problem that we're facing has their source in a lack of social and economic opportunities. So we need to tackle all those problems. And most important, results come with sustained efforts in the long run. This was something that we had to understand, that we were trying to overcome problems that had their origins in 3 decades ago. So it is really hard to try to overcome them in just 1 year. So we keep working in Ciudad Juarez, and that's a mandate from President Calderón to keep working until the end of the administration and to involve the local governments that just started last year in order to guarantee that the program will be sustained over the time.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Thanks for the invitation. I will draw from here, from this experience in Todos Somos Juárez, but also as part of the context, I would like to address the fact that from day one, President Calderón's administration started a strategy called Limpiemos México, that called for a strategy with a social prevention approach. This strategy came with three programs, three very large federal programs that had to do with public schools, with public spaces, and with centers for treatment for addiction treatment. I will draw from there, and the strategy I'm about to present, that is called Convivir Mejor. It's a strategy that takes its learnings from the Todos Somos Juárez experience, from Limpiemos México, and of course also from a lot of international experiences from Colombia, from New York, from Chicago, from all the stories that we've heard from and learned from comeback cities. Have been studied, and we think that somehow some of these learnings are in this new effort. The objective of this new strategy, I would just mention that it has two components. One component, and it's addressing some of the questions that Diana already put on the table, shows a process. Of course, we want to achieve, at the end, social cohesion, and we want to achieve resilient communities. But we know, as Adriana already mentioned, that this is a long-term achievement. We want to know that we are in the right path to that direction. So this strategy, basically, it's aiming to strengthen community dynamics through a series of actions. We call community dynamics very simple social contract things that are happening within a community. How many friends does someone has in their community? How many times a week someone goes out to the park? How secure a woman feels to walk out from her home after 7 p.m. to take a walk in the neighborhood? How often their kids can go alone to the park? Those are the things we're targeting in this strategy. These are things that we think we can impact with a sustained effort, with a targeted effort, with a focused effort in a, I will say, short-term thing. The second component of this objective is that the federal government is aligned, and it's helping, it's accompanying the local government in its efforts to improve the situation of a certain community and eventually a city as a whole. The federal government is now taking part of this strategy as someone who will trigger some actions within a local community, but after it will just leave it to the community and start a follow-up participation within the strategy. The critical success factors for this strategy are the articulation of existing programs. There are many programs, social programs, from the federal point of view, also from the community, from the local and state governments, and this is an effort of articulation. We want to create synergies between available human and financial resources. We want to focus this strategy on citizen participation and local leadership. You will see how we want to achieve this. Again, co-responsibility of stakeholders, public, private, and social actors. We want to focus interventions on defined territorial units, specifically in communities, neighborhoods. We're changing focus from the whole city approach to communities. And of course, the comprehensiveness of the approach. These are the three anchor programs that I mentioned earlier. Safe Schools. We have more than 30,000 schools in Mexico already involved in this program that requires schools to develop a program and very particular actions and guidelines to follow for creating a safe environment for children and youth within school. New Life Centers. There are around 350 centers for addiction treatment, early addiction treatment in the country. these new life centers are they come with a very specific support from Margarita Zavala, President Calderon's wife. And the public spaces program, we have within this program more than 3,000 public spaces recuperated across the country, and these three programs were part of the Limpiemos Mexico strategy. The idea is that these three programs should interact between them, and that's where we've had some problems. These programs have been working more in an isolated fashion than in an integrated fashion. So this strategy is a new effort to bring them together, to create conditions so they can interact more actively and achieve shared goals. Besides these three anchor programs, there are 17 other federal programs that are put together within the strategy. Some of them from Sedesol, that's been already mentioned, with Habitat, that's basic infrastructure, Oportunidades, Estancias Infantiles, temporary employment programs, education programs, healthy communities program, for example. Also, economic activation programs with the Secretaría of Economía, and also the Labor Ministry is not there, but it's participating with the temporary employment program. And very important, SSP, the Ministry of Public Safety, has also a very interesting approach to prevention that is not only a strong hand policing program, that is now trying to change the image of police within communities and helping local governments to develop community policing and stuff like that. How the framework for action here, the strategy is coordinated by the President's office. The federal government plays a role with these three anchor programs plus the other 17. State and municipal government plays a role with local programs and attention to youth at risk, and the network of citizens within their territories. NGOs, universities, research centers that do the follow-up. They create observatories to take into consideration the baseline evaluation of these indicators that I mentioned earlier, and the community, how the community gets involved with some commitment within the strategy. Transversally, the security strong hand somehow is also aware of these social prevention actions taking place at the same time. This is very important, because sometimes you have a very strong hand thing going on at the same time as some social efforts, and if they do not know that they're taking place at the same time, that coordination can really bring down some of the strong efforts that are being held from the social point of view. Okay, the strategy is implemented through 6 stages. I will focus only on 2 of them, but I will frame very briefly the 6 of them. The first one is capacity building. We're building, we're bringing some capacitation programs to federal representatives, federal delegates, in order to understand how this approach should be implemented. As you may know, these 20 federal programs already take place anyway in Mexico. I mean, they're working in every state, in every city. So the effort is basically taking a step back before going to implementation and coordinate. Think a little bit, find the spaces where we want to implement the strategy, and then do it, but in a very coordinated way. So we're bringing capacity to these guys, and also later on, this month, we're having regional capacitation and capacity building programs for local governments. Then we decide on territorial targeting, basically defining the hotspots in every city. Community involvement, community action plan, implementation, and evaluation. I will focus on the community involvement and community action plan. The community involvement phase starts with a call for participation. After the federal government and the local and state government have come to a basic agreement on where they want to start their first intervention, they call for the community to participate in a series of workshops where they identify their own problems on a map, where they do neighborhood walkouts, pointing out specific environmental problems that are happening, or some issues that are happening, or opportunities that are happening within the territory. At the same time, a local university can be doing the baseline survey for the basic indicators. A community group, working group is created, and at the end, very specific commitments and agreements take place. This is a map of a neighborhood in Cuernavaca, and this is showing more or less the process where. Yes.
Durango.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, this is Durango, but it's just an example. She knows the country. and we give them this series of stamps that are showing. Some of them show opportunities, some of them show problems, and the community in different groups, they just start putting these stickers on the map, and then we compare them, and when we find consistencies, we know there are some drug dealing thing going on somewhere, or there are some gangs taking, property of a public space or whatever. So that a lot of this is a very interesting way to understand how the community understands their own territory, and this is done at the map level. After doing that, people just come out and walk with us, or in this case, with the local government and the federal representative, pointing out things that are happening within their community, and some of these can, some of these problems can be tackled immediately. After this problem identification thing, this is a list of indicators. Okay, so something is wrong with the presentation, but I will just talk about the community action plan, because this is the last part of. Before going to implementation. After doing this community involvement stage, federal government, local, state, community with the university draw a document of no more than 10 pages where all the commitments for a 1-year action plan is described. There you would be able to see who is responsible for what, when the program is being implemented, how much, the budgeting for allocation for this strategy, and the baseline results. At the end of the year, the same people that took the survey come back, and we can measure these indicators, so we can, in a very short term period of time, we can know if we've been successful or not in creating or strengthening these dynamics within the community. Finally, we've come to 6 areas of opportunity where we think this strategy can be aligned to Pillar 4. Basically, the first one, we need to put together a very comprehensive strategy for youth. There are institutions in Mexico that work for youth, but the amount of work that it has to be done, the effort requires a much larger strategy, and I think this is one of the things that we could definitely work together. Drug abuse prevention programs, from both governments, targeting very specific communities. We have to be much more smarter, and we need to bring technology also to this issue. Capacity building for strategic governmental actors. we know that this administration is ending, and we want to be sure that some capacity is being left within the country, and the effort won't be, just wasted. We need also to foster NGO participation, but within a territorial and community approach. We've been working with NGOs for many, many years. Ciudad Juárez is a great example of that. But not all the efforts and all the money has been put within NGOs have had the impact that we all want to see. We need also to coordinate and to align NGOs to the public efforts. We need to institutionalize the best practices. We need to understand what are the good things that we're doing, and we have to institutionalize those. We have to communicate those in a much better way. And also we have to document and strengthen a model of targeted interventions as the one we're presenting here. We have to document every step. This is an ongoing process. This is going to take some years, and the better we understand how we're doing, where are our strengths, where are our areas of opportunity, the better we will, and the sooner we will improve the situation for the Mexican youth and for the Mexican cities. I think this is the end. Thank you very much.
Adriana Obregon and Enrique Betancourt, thank you both.
Thank you.
For the presentation that you have shared with us. I'm going to open the floor for discussion on our Mexican friends' presentation. I'd like to continue this until just shortly before 10 o'clock, and then we will move to the U.S. government side of it. But let me ask the first question. I don't have a sense of urgency as I listen and look at your presentation. I don't gather the panic and the urgency that exists in Ciudad Juárez, Reynosa, Tijuana. Is this a social program for the nation, or is it an emergency program for those cities most affected by the violence?
Well, Todos Somos Juárez was a very urgent strategy put together with the deficiency that sometimes urgency comes with. Convivir Mejor is a strategy that is learning from that experience and is a nationwide strategy that the way some of us put it is one of the big differences of these two strategies is the first one is more like a seminar where you have, as a teacher, you have the chance to interact a lot with the students, and the second one is more like a big lecture where you have the whole country. I mean, it's not a perfect example, but you have the whole country listen to your lecture, and you're giving them the same amount of tools, the same amount of information, and you know that some of them will perform much better than the others. We know we want to go to the whole country. That's our responsibility as a government. But we also know that we should put special efforts on the border, and with the cities that are performing or are more committed to the strategies, especially at the beginning, because we have to gain some rapport with this strategy, especially at the beginning.
Enrique, thank you. Raise your hand. A microphone will be coming to you, and if you would share with us your name and affiliation.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Claire Silky, and I work at Congressional Research Service, and so we work for the Congress, and they're always talking about, wow, it would be great to have a pilot project, and they don't realize that Todos Somos Juárez has already been around for a year, and that there's results that have been seen and maybe evaluated. And I wondered if you all had, on the indicators you're using in Convivir Mejor or in Todos Somos Juárez, are you going to make public information about like the number of safe areas? I had read something about maybe focusing the efforts in certain neighborhoods. Like, is there a number of neighborhoods that have been able to show the success? Or in Juárez, you were saying that you had to go to the whole city necessarily. Like, is this thing about focusing in certain communities, is that happening in Juarez too? And are you seeing a difference in the indicators in those neighborhoods versus the rest of the city? And the second question is, how are programs like Oportunidades that were designed for rural poverty? You know, it's different in the city, the needs, and so one thing I read was that, you know, Oportunidades needed to be kind of adapted, and some of these programs that have been around forever may not respond to the needs of people in a city. So, like, how would you change that program, or how is that being, you know, adjusted to the needs of the people in Juarez, for example?
Yeah.
In Ciudad Juarez, what we had last year, as Enrique mentioned, there was an urgency in working in the city. So we didn't have the time to have this baseline survey in order to make the measure. And there were set some goals, like of accomplishment of the programs in order to their objective. So we didn't have, and we don't have, the indicators that they are working with Convivir Mejor, which was something that we learned from Todos Somos Juarez. In order to measure the impact, we need those indicators. So there's a web page where you can go. It's www.todosomojuarez.gov.mx, where you can go, and there are all the reports about how the program was moving on throughout the whole year. And for this year in Todos Somos Juarez, as you did your question, and as she also questioned, what we're trying to do is to do both, two actions. We cannot move out of the whole city because we already started some processes that need to be finished, that need to be strengthened throughout this year. So we're working on a target effort in one of the neighborhoods in Ciudad Juarez, but by the other side, we're keep working with the citizen councils in strategies for the whole city. We're finishing the schools, we're finishing the hospitals throughout this year, and we are also working in other areas that we identified that we were not tackling last year, and that these citizens make us come aware that were necessary to start working in those programs. For example, in Mexico, the highest dropout rates, we have them from secondary school to preparatory school. In Ciudad Juarez, we have the highest dropout rates from primary school, from basic school to secondary school. So we have a program that is working. It's a pilot program that is working with these kids in order to keep them in school, not only by giving them scholarships, but by working with them and with their parents to know the true causes that are making them take that decision of dropping out from school. That's one of the programs, and we want to implement it in the whole country. And it was a program that came from one of the Education City Council. So this year in Ciudad Juarez, we're working in both ways, and we also have, we're not moving out from Juarez as far as I can see, so no, we're not. So,
Adriana, could you address the question about Oportunidades and how you'll adjust it? Or Enrique, you want to do that one?
Yeah, I was part of CEDESO last year, so I know that Oportunidades is a very, very big program, has lots of capacity, and one of the pilot projects for the urban Oportunidades was Juarez. So I cannot tell you about the results, but I know that there have been a lot of adaptation of the program, understanding urban conditions. So they tackling, for example, they understand very well that there is a very strong component regarding transportation, for example, or the costs of schooling and stuff like that. So Oportunidades, yes, it's addressing some of this much better than other programs, I have to say. I mean, Oportunidades has this chance because it's a very strong, very, very well-established program. But some of the other federal programs have been trouble being flexible and adapting to very particular conditions. This is something, for example, that in Convivir Mejor we're trying to address. Trying to leave like 80, this is just a number that comes to my mind, but leaving like 80% of the intervention to the federal programs, and give room for community programs, local programs to interact with the federal ones, addressing the specificity of the community.
Thank you. Other questions?
Good morning. My name is Mary Delory, and I'm with Catholic Relief Services. I had two questions for Mr. Betancourt. The first is in terms of the shared responsibility between public and private sector and civil society. There's been a lot of cynicism expressed by civil society in Mexico in terms of what can be accomplished with engaging private sector. And I would just like to know some concrete examples of how they've been engaged by the government to date on this strategy and any progress that has been particularly notable. The second question I have is in terms of the youth strategy. If you could elaborate a bit more in terms of the key components, both in the current strategy and elements that are being projected towards the future.
Sure. Well, the first one, the private sector has been involved in, or is thought to be involved because this is about to be implemented in many ways. The first of them is through their foundations. I mean, we have come to understand that, for example, efforts like Plan Estratégico Juárez or FECHAC or this I don't know if in English you call it also second floor.
Enrique, just explain what FECHAC is, because
I'm
that's new to our
Okay, I'm so
audience
sorry.
here.
FECHAC is the entrepreneurial foundation, is the business people foundation in Chihuahua. And it's a very, very well-established, strong foundation that supports social action within the state of Chihuahua.
And Ciudad Juárez, it lies within Chihuahua.
Exactly. So working with these local coalitions of businesses within each of the states in Mexico, it's part of the effort. We've come, for example, with agreements, for example, with certain entities like the National Constructors Association, for example. So we want to sign an agreement with them. So many of the actions and infrastructure that's going to be built within these communities can be connected to social proposals. And this also connects, for example, with the youth strategy. We need to start looking at youth in a way that is creating a path and a future vision for them. I mean, we have to make them actors, not only beneficiaries of programs, but we have to bring them more as very active actors within their own development. Part of this is connecting them to the economic engine of the country. We have to connect them also to the we have to put them on the stage as community actors and change makers. Basically, this should be the aim of the strategy. I have to say I'm not probably the right person to just break down the whole strategy as a whole.
Mary, is that, or do you have a further question or follow-up?
Just wanted more details on that, or is there someone that I could be in contact with that would have the overview of the strategy for you?
I think Carlo could be a great.
Hang in for our second
Yes.
panel. Any other questions? If not, sorry, forgive me, sir.
My name is Neil Price. I'm with the U.S. Visit Project. It was always my understanding that the movement of illegal drugs was primarily through and out of Mexico and was not, the majority of which were not greatly consumed within Mexico. But I see that components of Todos Somos Juárez and Conviva Mejor focus on drug treatment programs. I was wondering if you could expound upon those a bit and if you could share any data or conclusions you've drawn on the relapse and success rate of those programs.
Yeah, when the U.S. Make harder for people and for merchandise to cross the border, what drug dealers had is that they have merchandise. So what they need is to sell it. It doesn't matter where they sell it. So they started finding a market in Mexico for a demand for these drugs. So from 2002 till now, we have seen an increase in the consume of cocaine and of heroin. So, for example, in Ciudad Juárez, there's a high rate of heroin consumers. So what we're trying to do as a national strategy is to work both in the preventive and in the corrective way of drug consume. So in the Centros Nueva Vida, for example, the New Life Centers, what they do is they do a survey in the high schools and the primary schools where they detect if you are if you are propense, I don't know how, if I use the right word, if you are predisposed to consuming alcohol or drugs. So they start working with you in the preventive way. And also, if they detect that you are consuming drugs, they can channel you to specialized areas where they can treat you. That's the strategy of Centros Nueva Vida. And maybe Enrique can tell
Well,
you.
I was just looking at some data. You asked for some data. There's something called the National Survey for Addictions, Encuesta Nacional de Adicciones, ENA. That is the last one is from 2008. It's online. I have an email here with some information I can share with you. But for example, it's showing how cocaine doubled almost in consumption from 2002 to 2008. It's showing how marijuana increased also not as much as cocaine. Crack, it's amazing how much crack grew within the country. Basically, cocaine and crack are the two kind of drugs that are growing a lot in the country. Of course, it has to do with what Adriana said already, with the strengthening of the enforcement in the states, but also with the lack of opportunities, with the social degradation in many of the communities in Mexico.
I realize you probably don't have much hard data on it, but can you give us any kind of anecdotal evidence or any kind of anecdotal data and give a conjecture on how these programs would actually have an effect on that?
For example, in Ciudad Juárez last year, we found that there was a high rate of women consuming drugs. But usually women are the ones that take their relatives to these kind of centers to treat their abuse, but no one takes women to the treatment centers. So what we did, we found some NGOs that are doing a really good work working with women. So what the Ministry of Health did was just transfer resources for them, for these NGOs, so that they can expand their services and keep working well as they do it. That was one of the anecdotal things I can tell you.
The last question here on the right, please. If those of you who still have questions, will have an opportunity after AID and INL have made their presentations. But please.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Winger from USAID Office of Transition Initiatives. My question is, these are fantastic programs, but they've been created under the administration of President Calderon. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the potential for these programs existing under a subsequent administration, and what types of attempts are being made in the government right now to ensure their permanence, if possible.
Well, what we're trying to do is to build a body of knowledge, shared knowledge, about what should be done. Like the experiences from Medellin, from Bogota, the information gathered by UN Habitat, for example, the Safer Cities program, is very aligned to this kind of strategy. So we think that more or less we know which are the basics, the ABCs that we have to follow through. We have to build rapport. We have to communicate these strategies in a much better way, because there's some people still in the different levels of government, in academics, in the civil society, that think, for example, that we should come to a city and save the whole city as a whole very quickly. So sometimes in Mexico, I think we're beginning a phase that when we go to Colombia, people understands us very, very, very well. They know that it's a long-run thing. Then they know we're big at the beginning. We know we're dealing with, for example, with the media. Todos Somos Juárez, which is a social prevention strategy, started on February 2010, and 1 month later, the papers were saying, Todos Somos Juárez has been here for a month already, and nothing has changed. A month, truly. And some academics started doing some measures, measuring for the program, like 6 months after the strategy started. Of course, we won't find any results in that period of time. So we have to bring a lot of awareness to the community, to politicians, to decision makers, in order to understand how this process how long does this take, and which are the steps that are towards the right direction.
Just to complement, I think that, for example, what guarantees that Oportunidades continues from administration to administration was, first, the success of the program that can be said by well-known indicators, and second, we said, if you have, for example, a study from the World Bank or from the IDB that is recognized internationally, that is a way that you can make the program to move up from administration to administration. For example, in these kind of strategies, they always ask us, you have to put the indicator of homicides in your program to see if your program is successful. But we know that the homicides is something that is going to start going down through policing, not through us. And so they decided that the indicators that Enrique showed in the presentations were the ones that could have a short-term impact, in which we could impact in the short term, and with that, then start working with the academia or with universities or with the centers, where we can guarantee that maybe the program could move on from administration to administration, because someone is unfortunately, we need someone outside to recognize the success of the program.
Pillar 4 is a good way.
That's why we're putting that.
Thank
kind
you
of
both
interaction.
very much. Now, don't go to sleep, because you'll be still liable for questions after the U.S. government has made its presentation. I'm going to ask Kermit Moe from USAID to lead us off on this part of the program. It is somewhat unfair, because Kermit has only taken on this responsibility in the last 30 days. So he's very green. However, he does bring a wealth of experience as a USAID official in many parts of the world. Kermit, floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to thank the Wilson Center for hosting such a timely panel, and also the other panelists who are with me today. I'm very pleased to be here representing USAID at this event. Secretary Clinton recently said that the U.S.-Mexico relationship is one of the most important relationships that exist between any two countries in the world. Cooperation between our countries is of paramount importance to both countries' national interests. Our two countries are inextricably linked by a 2,000-mile border that is crossed every day by 1 million people, and with daily cross-border trade of over $1 billion. The border is a mutual benefit, and it is both our interest to ensure that Mexican communities in general, border communities in particular, are strong and resilient. And thus our work at USAID is for the benefit of the Mexican people as well as the American people. However, recently, as you well know, some border communities have become under attack from transnational criminal organizations introducing unprecedented levels of violence. USAID is working in two key areas to strengthen the U.S.-Mexico border, with Mexico in the lead through the Beyond Merida initiative. This is an unprecedented partnership between the U.S. and Mexico to fight organized criminal groups and associated violence that affect both sides of the border. And of course, USAID is one part of a larger effort. Effective law enforcement with support from the State Department's INL and our Department of Justice is key to our success. And the first area that we're working in is supporting efforts of the Mexican government, civil society, and private sector to promote a more fair and more transparent justice system in accordance with Mexico's constitutional reform of 2008. USAID's focuses primarily at the state level, where political will and local financial support for reforms has enhanced the potential for successive programs. Second, USAID supports programs to address the social and economic needs of Mexican communities under threat by criminal organizations. These programs are aimed at ensuring that communities see and feel a net concrete benefit from efforts designed to reduce crime and violence and increase the confidence of the American people in their government, the Mexican people in their government. Before I jump into some details, let me say a few words about the link between these two areas, the rule of law and building strong and resilient communities. The success of community programming is closely linked to rule of law. Rule of law programs are intended to usher in a new, more efficient, and effective justice system, increasing the likelihood that violent criminals will be convicted. Community programming seeks to address the social and economic needs of communities in Mexico under threat by criminal organizations. Together, these efforts address the impunity that feeds the spiral of criminality and violence and helps the Mexican state address citizen needs to break this cycle. Now let me get into some more details about the rule of law work. The program works comprehensively with 7 select states, including the border states of Baja California, Chihuahua, Nuevo León, with the other 4 states outside of the border areas being Morelos, Oaxaca, Hidalgo, and Durango. And we anticipate providing assistance to additional states as resources become available. This program helps transition from an old-style inquisitorial system where judges consider evidence in chambers and the accused often don't have the right to confront witnesses to a modern accusatorial system. The experiences of Chile, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic have shown that this transition improves the efficiency of the judicial system, clearing out the backlog and allowing the judiciary to focus on serious cases. The transition also enhances human rights because it is a more transparent system and less subject to corruption. Justice sector activities in these states are already yielding results. For example, in the state of Chihuahua, where reforms have advanced to the stage that the new system is operating, criminal investigations are completed at a higher rate than in any other state. Turning to building strong and resilient communities, this past summer, USAID began 2 programs in Ciudad Juarez to assist communities in mapping crime and violence, as well as providing viable, licit, and healthy alternatives for youth. One of our initial efforts is crime mapping. This is a USAID project implemented by the Pan American Health Organization in collaboration with the Ciudad Juarez Crime Observatory. The project recently completed a comprehensive baseline evaluation on the existing democratic, health, economic, and social conditions in Juarez. As we develop this further, we will support Ciudad Juarez in identifying those specific neighborhoods and blocks particularly subject to crime and violence. The data have been shared with the government of Mexico and posted online for use by the general public. The program is now working with the observatory to conduct awareness campaigns for the government and citizens at large based on the information collected during the mapping exercise. At the same time, the program continues to strengthen the observatory's data collection techniques and methodologies to ensure they have the ability to continue this work after the USAID program ends.
Kermit, what is the observatory? That's a new term for me and
Part of the NGOs as well as governments that we're working with. I mean,
it's a Mexican
Yes.
organization.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mexican organization.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So drawing on lessons from U.S. cities, this crime mapping activity will help the government and civil societies organizations of Ciudad Juarez prioritize where to target and carry out other investments to respond effectively to the risks. And also in Juarez, USAID supports IYF, the International Youth Foundation, and you'll be hearing from them later today, to provide safe spaces for disadvantaged young people, strengthening and expanding after-school and summer programs, and preparing Mexican youth for viable futures through self or salaried employment. For instance, in Ciudad Juarez, we're preparing youth for the 21st century by conducting skills training based on a market labor assessment. And our target is that by the end of the project in September 2012, at least 500 at-risk youth between the ages of 16 to 28 who were previously unemployed will have obtained a full-time job. The program was just kicked off by IYF on April 7th as a good pilot to get things going. And IYF has an active partnership with the Chihuahua Business Foundation, a philanthropic organization made up of businesses across the state of Chihuahua. It also partners with local organizations that implement the summer camp and after-school programs. And for every dollar of that USAID invests in the program, there's approximately $3.40 that is leveraged from the Mexican government, private donors, foundations, and local implementing partners. So that really demonstrates some concrete political will that's going on in a program of this type in Mexico. These programs of crime mapping and youth programming are initial investment by USAID. We recently received additional funds focused specifically on strengthening communities, and we're in the process of developing new programs as part of a broader bilateral effort to build stronger and more resilient communities that can withstand the pressures of crime and violence. USAID will be working at federal, state, and local levels with an initial focus on Ciudad Juarez to support Mexican initiatives. The new initiatives will be in three broad areas. First, we want to work on increasing the capacity of federal institutions to develop policies, support local implementation, and engage in strategic communications and outreach. This means supporting Mexicans in defining appropriate roles for federal versus state and local governments. And one example would be helping the federal government carry out robust monitoring and evaluation to identify what works best in one region and should be scaled up elsewhere. It could also include dialogue with key stakeholders on crime and violence issues, technical studies, and targeted communication plans to support crime prevention. Second, we want to support state and local governments in responding to citizen needs regarding crime and violence. A fundamental part of this work is building on the crime mapping we've started, which will allow state and local government institutions to understand better where to target their resources so they can be effective in crime prevention and start to build greater citizen confidence in government. Activities include urban and municipal planning to identify challenges and opportunities, creation of a seed capital fund to support crime prevention programs that address identified risk factors such as lack of economic opportunity, domestic violence, lack of education, and so on, and a bond issuance program to help ensure sustainability. And third, recognizing the critical importance of specifically addressing at-risk youth who lack opportunities and are prey to gangs, we will develop focused investments to create alternatives for at-risk youth and prevent their involvement in criminal activity. As I've noted, we've begun some of this work with youth already, and to jumpstart these efforts in Mexico, USAID has rewarded several small grants totaling approximately $1 million to local non-governmental organizations focusing on justice and security, trafficking in persons, human rights, and initiatives that address the violence and security issues in Ciudad Juarez. As we expand on these initial efforts, we want to work with communities and local governments and non-government institutions to create alternatives for at-risk youth. Activities may include expanding out-of-school programs, improving access to services for youth, including mental health, education, and family planning, and providing technical and vocational educational services. Even with all these plans and strong commitment, we have to recognize that the challenges are formidable and won't be overcome overnight, as you mentioned. They involve institutional change, strengthening communities, creating economic opportunities, and above all, perseverance. The U.S. and USAID are committed to stay the course with Mexico to overcome these challenges because we know it will strengthen both nations. In closing, I'd like to once again thank the Wilson Center for giving me the opportunity to talk about this, and look forward to any questions that might arise at the end of this session.
Kermit, thank you very much. Since you have a paper, Eric, would it be possible to photocopy your remarks and have them available at the break outside? Is that possible? Because it was not possible to take notes as you were
Certainly.
delivering.
Might have to do some adjusting here.
All right, well, we'll leave that for you. Can I now ask, please, Susan Snyder of the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, known otherwise as INL,
Right.
please.
Great. Thank you. INL manages many of the State Department's foreign assistance programs that focus on developing or further enhancing their partners' law enforcement and judicial capacity. After a brief description of the Merit Initiative, just because it hasn't been done, I'm going to go into our role in Pillar 4 and detail some of the programs that we're active in. As many of you know, the Merit Initiative began as a request from President Calderon to then President Bush in 2007 to work together in dealing with transnational organized crime, including drug trafficking. This unprecedented cooperation is continued under President Obama, and our joint U.S.-Mexican programs focus on 4 strategic goals or pillars. I'm sure you know what they are, but I'm just going to run through them anyways. The first is disrupting organized criminal groups. The second is strengthening criminal justice institutions and institutionalizing rule of law. The third is building a 21st century border. And the fourth, that we're here to talk about today, is building strong and resilient communities. After 3 years of really unprecedented bilateral cooperation, our joint efforts are now confronting 2 important transitions that will help shape the future of the Merida Initiative. The first is a move from large-scale and expensive equipment and technology to more training and technical assistance in the rule of law areas. The second is an expansion from programs at the federal level to a broader focus to state and local levels. Pillar 4, Building Strong and Resilient Communities, occupies a role in both these transitions through its state and local focus, as well as its emphasis on the rule of law. Let's see. Under Pillar 4, through partnerships with the Mexican federal, state, and local governments and NGOs, the U.S. government seeks to provide technical support to facilitate Mexican efforts to plan and implement community development strategies aimed at reducing crime and violence and providing Mexico's young people alternatives to criminal activities, as we've been discussing. INL really has a smaller role in this, although it's going to seem very large after I'm done detailing what we're doing. But really, Pillar 4 is one of our smallest kind of investments at the pillar level. They're important investments, but they are the smaller ones. INL's Pillar 4 efforts center on 4 broad categories, as you see here: culture of lawfulness, demand reduction, crime and corruption tip lines, and strategic communications. While we're at various stages of implementation in the 4 categories, I'm just going to outline some of our efforts, just very briefly. The first is culture of lawfulness. Culture of lawfulness refers to the idea that each person in society has an individual responsibility to support and facilitate the rule of law. Under the Merit Initiative, the U.S. government uses culture of law funding to provide structured culture of law education through the public school system, law enforcement entities, and the public media. We use the NGO, the National Strategy Information Center, or NSIC, who is our original partner for culture of lawfulness activities and has been around for almost 10 years in Mexico. They are doing projects primarily with the police, education, and media sectors. Working with the NSIC, the Mexican Federal Police has committed to training all of their 35,000 plus members in culture of lawfulness. Already, 100 federal and state police officers are accredited to teach culture of lawfulness at major SSP education facilities and state academies. A 40-hour course has already been taught to more than 5,000 federal police officers, and regular trainings are now ongoing. This training is also now beginning to be integrated within state-level police forces, beginning in the 5 northern border states. NSIC is also launching a multi-sector community-based project in Ciudad Juarez to engage leaders from all sectors of society, including healthcare, businesses, etc. NSIC hopes to duplicate the projects in other cities such as Monterrey and Tijuana in the future. After NSIC assistance in building their own capacity, the Mexican NGO Mexico United Against Crime, or MUCD, took over recently the education program activities and now coordinates their efforts with NSIC. Culture of lawfulness educational materials are now part of the national school curricula in Mexico. In this school year, a 120-hour Culture of Lawfulness course will be taught in 24 Mexican states to over 700,000 students. MUCD's projects range from teacher training and working with parents and associations to developing IT and social networks that support culture of lawfulness messaging.
Susan, I'm going to interrupt you too.
Yes.
MUCD. What are you talking about?
Mexico, it's a Mexican, here, I
All
just
right,
changed it,
okay.
sorry. Mexico United Against Crime, but it is a Mexican acronym, right? A Spanish acronym?
Yes.
Yes,
There you
it's
go.
the Mexican acronym.
There you go. There it is. Okay. Sorry about that. So MUCD's projects range from teacher training, working with parents associations, developing IT and social networks, supporting culture of lawfulness workshops for religious association leaders, and training for Mexico's Attorney General's office and municipal police. And finally, in a project that's slated to begin this July, the Youth in Action Exchange Program is going to provide intensive workshops in the United States for Mexican high school students so they can develop their leadership and civic engagement skills. This project is jointly funded by INL, Mexico's Ministry of Education, and private sector groups. The emphasis here is on community problem solving and grassroots action, particularly ways to address problems associated with violence and drugs. I remember this time. Our demand reduction programs are probably the biggest one that we're investing in this pillar. We are working here with our Mexican partners in combating drug consumption in Mexico. There are 8 different projects I'm going to just briefly touch. I know there are only 7 up here, but we added one in there. The first one is one that Enrique mentioned before, which is RENADIC, the National Network for Technology Exchange for Addiction Services. And this creates an IT platform that links the 350 so New Life addiction resource facilities across Mexico and establishes an important infrastructure that enables the addiction resource community to share best practices and allows the government of Mexico to gather this important information and track the trends in addiction and who is seeking treatment. In a separate effort, in a joint effort with the OAS Inter-American Drug Abuse Control Commission, or CCAD, INL is using an OAS-sponsored curriculum to train and certify over 600 professional substance abuse counselors across Mexico. In a collaboration between the government of Mexico's National Psychiatric Institute and the University of Miami, the Clinical Trials Network establishes a scientific infrastructure forming a nationwide network to evaluate the effectiveness and impact of drug abuse treatment centers. Our Community Coalitions project establishes anti-drug community coalitions in Tijuana, Ciudad Juarez, and Nogales to strengthen awareness and activities of various community members, such as families, educators, clergy, coaches, healthcare workers, etc. We've just started a new project to provide drug treatment services in prisons. Under this project, 6 prison facilities will receive rehabilitation services to reduce drug addiction and recidivism rates within the correctional services. We're also assisting a 70-bed residential substance abuse treatment center in Ciudad Juarez. Funding under this project goes for equipment and training for the staff. INL has also been providing training for drug court officials in the states of Nuevo León and Chiapas. This includes training for judges, prosecutors, public defenders, psychologists, etc. And finally, under demand reduction, we're beginning a drug prevention model center for indigenous populations starting in the Yaqui community in Sonora. I'm not sure I pronounced that right.
Yes.
Yaqui, okay. In this project, we're developing handbooks and training materials able to accommodate culturally aware messages and identifying crucial variables in the trend of increasing substance abuse in indigenous communities. The third project that we're working on is a tip line. And in cooperation with the Mexican Federal Police in Juarez, this pilot project seeks to provide an anonymous tip line for the citizens of Ciudad Juarez. The project, if successful, could be expanded nationwide. The project seeks to build increased trust and collaboration between Ciudad Juarez citizens and the police. The IT infrastructure that we've been providing will be able to handle multiple forms of communication including telephone messages, text messaging, internet, and even letters.
Can we just explain to the audience what SSP is?
Oh yes, the Mexican Federal Police, right? SSP.
The Ministry of Safety.
Ministry of Safety. Safety. There we go. I used the easy one. So the tip line project creates one number, 066, for tips and emergency calls, and then provides options like our 911 system, whether you want to provide a tip on corruption or crime, or you need an emergency service. The center in Juarez connects to the SSP, the Mexican Federal Police's 24-hour command center, and to Plataforma Mexico. Trained operators and dispatchers man the line, and measures are taken to ensure the anonymity of the caller. The plan is for each caller to receive a case number for future reference, enabling the caller to add more information later or receive updates on the case. The tip line is now under construction, with rollout expected to begin in July 2011. As you can imagine, there are a lot of issues with this project. It's a very difficult one to implement, and not least of the challenges is that up to 80% of the calls that we may get on this tip line could be prank calls. So that's just one of the issues. Strategic communications is an important part of any effort, and Merida really is no different. Both the U.S. government and Mexico governments agree, we all agree, that we would like to talk more openly and publicly about deepening and expanding the U.S.-Mexico partnership. We're trying under this effort to hold more joint events that really show and demonstrate how we're working together. Oops, there we go. Pillar 4 is a long-term undertaking, as everyone has noted. This isn't going to happen overnight, and it's going to take commitment on both sides for multiple years. The progress our cooperation has achieved in recent years has been really significant, and be assured that the Merida Initiative is on the right track and over time will be even more successful.
Susan and Kermit, thank you both very much for your presentation. I'm going to take advantage of the chair to launch the first question. How is it that a Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement is in effect addressing social issues, while USAID, forgive me Kermit, seems late in the game and small offerings to address these problems?
Do you want me to address mine first? I won't try yours. So the Bureau for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs has very wide authorities. We are not the social development or even a development organization, although in the justice sector realm we do a lot of development projects and confront issues. I think we realized a long time ago in programs that probably started in Thailand and Laos back in the early 80s and late 70s, and in Guatemala a long time ago, and now really all over the world, that you really have to have some of the components that we're focused on to be successful. It's what we've been talking about all morning, which is you have to have the enforcement side, but you also have to concentrate on some of the social sides. And as everyone knows, or should know, that when drugs traffic through a country, there is always, in the experience that we've had over 30 years, there's always drugs being given most of the time in payment for services. And those drugs are then sold or used, and you get demand problems. So demand reduction is an area that INL has been involved in for probably over 30 years. Culture of lawfulness is another one that we've been dabbling in for probably at least the last 10 years. And while we're not the experts in this, we do work with organizations who are the experts and the talent, like we like to say, in developing and teaching what culture of lawfulness and respect for rule of law is. So those, while USAID is the development organization that does these things in social development work, there is a piece of this that is very relevant to what we do as well.
And I might jump in. I'm not. Your observation is an interesting one. I'm not sure that we can actually say that it's we've jumped in late or anything else like that. I think we've worked very closely with the government of Mexico, with the states, and with civil society to really get programs going, planned, and we're at the point of operationalizing everything right now. We're in a situation now where we put out what we call an annual program statement, and that basically is getting ideas from private sector and civil society as to how to start implementing certain programs. We've established certain parameters to go forward. But what happens there is it's not only us putting up funds, but we're asking that civil society and private sector also come in and start matching the funds that we put up within the certain parameters that we carry out. So, you know, we're building in the sustainability issue as we move along here, which I think is very important to move along. And then with regard to the longer term things of, you know, reclaiming space and areas like that, we've been working a lot with the states, because this again has to be financed. This is something that's got to be a sustainable operation. So there are bond issuances and things like that that are going on right now that we're helping the states pull together and put in place so that this can carry on well beyond, let's say, the USAID program and things like that.
Kermit, thank you. Let me open it up for the floor. And once again, for those who've arrived more recently, if you could give us your name and your affiliation. We have 2 microphones.
Hi, good morning. My name is Julie Ciccarone, and I'm with USAID. I just wanted to add onto that question that Diana asked and Kermit was answering to say that we've had a program in Mexico for years, and we've done a lot of social development programming. We've done poverty reduction programs, we've had health education programs, and university-to-university partnerships in Mexico for many, many years. Pillar 4 is a fairly new pillar when it comes to Merida. Or the Beyond Merida initiative actually itself is fairly young. So we've also, as we've gotten resources for Pillar 4, have taken more of a lead in collaborating with INL and the government of Mexico to start making some of these investments in Ciudad Juarez. But I just wanted to state that AID has been working in Mexico for many years with a variety of social programs.
Julie, could you also elaborate about the funding? Do you receive funding direct from the Congress, or do you receive it via INL?
For Pillar 4 in particular, we will be receiving a transfer of funds from INL to begin this, but we anticipate that future funding will come from a combination of direct appropriation from Congress as well as possibly some future transfers from INL.
Thank you very much. There is somebody just, yes, Mary Beth Sheridan.
Thank you. Susan, I was wondering if...
Beth is with the Washington Post.
Sorry, yes. I was wondering if you could elaborate on the TIP line project. What have been the challenges in trying to set that up? Is there anything similar that you've run or funded in the U.S. or in other countries? You know, how is it different in Mexico to set that up? Thank you.
There are other programs, and I'm not as familiar with them in other countries. The biggest problem is ensuring that that it's safe, to be frank. People need to feel secure when they are calling in tip lines. As we all know, the violence in Ciudad Juarez is extreme, and it's a frightening thing to say anything about anything that you may know or have seen. And so it's been a very big kind of push to ensure the security and safety of this project. In addition, a big part of the project has been to try and bridge the gap between the police and civil society. In many societies, this is a very hard thing to do. In our own society, it was very difficult years ago. And so that has been a challenge to figure out even where to start and how to start building the mechanisms to trust-building mechanisms, whatever they may be. So this is a longer-term project. Getting the tip line up is only the beginning, but eventually what we would like to see is for citizens to actually see how their tips help and contribute and to see results. And so that's where the public and the private sector, or the citizens and the government will come together eventually and share this type of information. But again, it's a security issue. even giving feedback on the tips that they provided, the case kind of has to be closed before that happens. And so there's a lot of understanding and trust that needs to be built before the project is going to fulfill kind of all of those things that we want it to do.
How do you assure anonymity? What is the technical procedure?
Oh, you asked me the technical question.
No, but I mean,
There
without
is-
going
there is-
into
yeah, there's something
physics.
there's something within the telephone systems, and they've been working very closely with the and I don't even know what they are, but the Carlos Slims and the Telmex and all of that to ensure that there is a switch that takes out all of the personal data. As you know, our telephones, as we've been hearing on the news recently, track everything. They know everything about all of us. And this, when you call this number, it will kind of wipe that out. And so what the call center will get is none of that personal information.
Enrique or Adriana, do you want to contribute here?
About this project, one of the things that we have faced is that people in Ciudad Juarez especially do not trust police. So it is really hard to work with this kind of projects if they do not believe that they're going to be in anonymity, and also if they do not trust the policing and the actions that are going to be taken. So with the Citizen Council of Security especially, we're working with this project, and what they say is that they want to be part, the citizens want to be part of a communication strategy where they can go out and tell the citizens, go, it's going to be safe, we can guarantee you that they're going to take actions about all the tips that you give, because us as authorities, I think that they do not believe that this is gonna work if we go out. So we have to start working with the citizens and making them part of this project so that they are the ones that guarantee that it is gonna work, and then start building this trust, because I think that this the trust in police in Ciudad Juarez is really damaged.
Joy Olson.
Hi, my name is Joy Olson. I'm at the Washington Office on Latin America. I was, maybe this is a statement of frustration more than a question, but I was sitting here thinking, I watched Plan Colombia over the years. I watched the Merit Initiative before it became the Merit Initiative, and I think Pillar 4 is completely the right place to be making investment. What I feel tremendously frustrated about right now is that it's only now coming online. I mean, it's just appalling that it can take so long, and the idea that we have to fund these kinds of things through INL, no offense intended, is kind of ridiculous. So I know that Congress is the one who appropriates funds in various ways that make all this happen, and there's a willingness to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on helicopters, but not on these kinds of programs. And I don't know, I'm just wondering, it doesn't seem like anywhere near enough on the Pillar 4 side of things, comparatively speaking, and I don't know if any of you are willing to address that. But
Enrique, I'd like you to address it from a Mexican point of
I
view.
will.
What is your attitude towards
we
this?
completely agree. We have sometimes the same frustration within the Mexican government from the social ministry's point of view. It's not only coming after, but it's coming also with a very small amount of money compared to the rest of the pillars. But we know perfectly well that this is something that we have really to push forward. That's why we're here. That's why we also are having a lot of meetings with USAID, with the embassy in Mexico, pushing a coordinated strategy, because also I have to say that sometimes different ministries in Mexico have approached USAID in a non-coordinated manner, and what we're trying to do from the President's office is to build a strategy like Convivir Mejor or Todos Somos Juárez, where all the ministries can align to, and then ask for money in a very strategic manner, in a very comprehensive way. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, especially from the President's Calderon administration, that it's it's coming to 2 final years, there's a need to push forward this pillar very strongly.
Just to complement what he was saying, I think that the urgency of the interventions that we've been talking here is more, you can see it more with the helicopters and with better weapons with the police. And since the effects of the social and the economic interventions are seen long term, maybe they haven't been given the importance that we know that these kind of interventions need. So yeah, I think that both USAID and us have been talking about this, that the funds have come late, and but it's a new pillar, so it is difficult in the mechanism of Iniciativa Mérida to bring the fundings for the programs, but also it's a small amount, and that's what we are both pushing in our governments so that it can increase, because we're as we said, we're working with the causes, not only with the effects. And we believe that the real impact will come from this kind of interventions. Okay. And they're the ones that are going to have a long-last effect. So we have to keep working on that.
Susan, perhaps you could share the numbers. What is the budget for Pillar 4?
Okay, maybe. Let me just let me just go back and say one thing about when Pillar 4 was kind of finally blessed. It happened last March with the meeting with Mexican Foreign Secretary Espinosa and Secretary Clinton in Mexico City, March 23rd, I think, last year. That was when the 4-pillar strategy was blessed. As we have all said before, there were elements of Pillar 4 and the social things, as Julie said, and our programs have been there for quite a while. This kind of categorized them. The next funding source came after March. We've been in a continuing resolution until just recently for the 11 budget, but INL did get a supplemental boost in FY10. And under that, I think, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've transferred $25.5 million to USAID for Pillar 4 and other issues, some judicial and human rights things. There have been other pieces, I think, and I can't see Julie here, but 14 million was the number for Pillar 4 exclusively. I do want to say the Pillar 4 programs, as you pointed out, are less expensive than helicopters. We all know that, but I don't think we should be comparing apples and oranges. It's not as expensive to have youth development programs as it is to train 3,500 or 5,000 police officers. That's not to say there shouldn't be more money, but it is what Congress appropriates, and they've appropriated to INL, which is we asked the same question, kind of why is that, and not to not to aid directly, but yeah. And we also have to again look to leverage resources. I mean, it's more than the government of Mexico and USAID or the government of the United States. It's other parties, private sector, and everything else. And so we've got to have programs that do that.
We have 3 people seeking to ask questions. Eric Olson on my right, the lady with the pink shirt, and a gentleman in a white shirt behind. Eric.
Hi, yeah. Maybe I ask a question in a different direction. I understand there's a lot of need and a sense of urgency and all those things being true, and we wish that people had been working on this 5, 10, 15 years ago. On the other hand, sometimes I get the impression that both governments are doing a lot of things. There's a lot of activity, but I don't have a good sense that it comes out of a clear diagnosis of the problem and that it's based on a real strategic view of it. And I don't mean to single this out necessarily, but when I hear Ciudad Juarez say they had 160 policy action areas, it sounds like, it's the kitchen sink and, vegetable soup, and it's everything. And I'm sure that all those things are urgent and important and needed, but it doesn't signal to me a sense of prioritization, a real starting point, a real strategy. Where do you start in this problem? Because you can't say everything is a need and we're going to do everything, because it makes people cynical then that you're never really going to do anything. So I guess that's the part of it that's not entirely clear to me.
Adriana, since you've been so involved in the 160 action plan, would you be the first to take this on?
I must say that I agree with what we're pointing out. It was a never seen call for action for the federal government coming from the citizens to go to Ciudad Juárez. And we did this plan in just about 14 days of nonstop work, which, if you can say, it's not enough for doing the appropriate planning. So what we try to do is to do working tables with the citizens and to listen to what they were asking for. That was really important for this strategy. Months earlier, we were working at the Office of the President in a plan for Ciudad Juárez. But when we arrived and we started talking to these leaders, they were telling us, don't come with an already made plan. So we have to put that aside and start listening to them and start working with them. What you said is right. There were tons of policy actions. Not all of them were necessary, or they were the ones that we would have liked to start working with, but it was also a way of telling the people we're listening to you and we're listening to what you are asking for. So I think that this year, and also we had a lot of pressure, of social pressure, to start working, to listen to them, and to start doing actions in Ciudad Juárez. I think that this year we have a better sense of what is needed, where it is needed, and how to target all these efforts in a better way. And that's why we're trying to strengthen the programs that we see that are successful and to tackle the things that were not noticed a year earlier.
What would be one or two of those priority things that you now have time to think about? Just give us time.
I think that one of the priorities is the dropout rates, to bring people to schools. I think that unfortunately, our education system...
The dropout rate.
The dropout, yeah. I think that our education system is not appealable enough for young people to stay working there. So we have two programs. For example, one is called Construyete, which is a program that is working in high schools. And they have these, for example, activities like graffiti for kids. And it's a way for keeping them in an interest in the school, where they are safer and that they can start working in something that is more appealable for young people. So I think that would be one, to bring people to schools. And the other one, I believe that is going to be employment, because people need to work. People need to have money to bring to their homes. And if government does not fill that gap through programs that is going to train people, and by trying to bring investments to the city, so crime policy is going to fill that spot. So that's something that we're going to prioritize. And also we're trying to do this experiment in target areas to try to work all together and to start saving one neighborhood by dropping a rock, and they start making these circles around. So we're going to start working in one neighborhood and then go around to start saving the city, part by part.
Adriana, thank you. The lady with the pink shirt who's been so patient.
Adriana, you mentioned that...
Hold on, wait, there's a microphone coming.
Hi, Chris Kaiser, Department of Defense. Adriana, you mentioned that the citizens, I believe, in Ciudad Juárez were mistrustful of the police, and probably rightfully so. I know that the government had called for police reforms and vetting of all police officers. How did the citizens feel about the current and future success of those reforms?
One of the things that we're doing this year is to there's a force of 2,500 federal police in Ciudad Juárez, but this is not sustainable. We need to reinforce the capacities of the local police. So we're working really close with the municipal police to help them build capacities. We're gonna also start working with pilot group of 222 police for the municipal government that are going to start from scratch. So that, well, people from Ciudad Juarez tell you that their police is really corrupt and that the cartels are working through their police. So they need the renovations and they need to change these bad officers into good officers. So also, for example, we're working really close with the municipal president to start working on this. They are the ones that are setting the priorities in the policing area. It's not us. We're just supporting them. So for this group of 222 is made throughout the city, throughout the country, in the state level, but in this case for Ciudad Juarez, we're doing it in the city level because we need to reinforce the police corporations.
Adriana, expand a little bit on that, and what is the current role of the military in Ciudad Juarez?
The militaries are in charge of the security around Ciudad Juarez. They are not in charge of the security inside Ciudad Juarez. And they are also in charge of the airport and of the crossing aduanas, how you say it?
Customs.
And of customs, but they are not policing Ciudad Juarez.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back on the left of Joy Olson.
My name is Samar Chatterjee from Safe Foundation. This question is addressed to you, Diana, especially since you have a way of addressing very sensational and provocative questions. And I would like to ask you that, when the United States feels something is really urgent and very, very immediate and great urgency, it goes to Security Council and gets a mandate to bomb a country or something like fabricate enough evidence to invade a country. Now, have we reached that point in our Mexican-United States relationship to do something like that? And did you mean that? Or I do think that this kind of a program that you Mexicans have presented and also our State Department has presented needs to be expanded in a manner that Mexican police has had particularly the federal police has had a reputation, even though I'm not a Mexican, of being very corrupt, oppressing people from the Mexican friends that I've had. So given that when State Department's INL starts disrupting gangs and increasing violence, the Mexican violence is a product of American intervention. So there needs to be action to pacify the situation because Mexico is in the throes of unparalleled violence. Thank you.
Samar, the answer to your question to the Security Council is no, and I'm not sure the veto wouldn't come from Washington. Second part of the question is for Enrique.
I'm not sure I understood right the question. I mean, it was a comment about how the State Department is acting within, I mean, as a partner of the federal police in Mexico?
No, I was trying to say that they were trying to put pressure on you to get more of a violent. I think her question was addressed to you that you're not doing something very urgent. So my position was that I think what you need to do is what you're doing in a much bigger and expanded way, so that you can bring changes. I know from countries like I'm from India, and I know when you disrupt criminal gangs, you create violence, and as you see in what's happening in Pakistan, I mean, the whole country is up in flames. So you don't want to, when you get into a situation where you had criminal gangs almost institutionalized in a country, you've got to gradually intervene and change things. Should be using the Gandhian approach, in my opinion.
No, but we should definitely, sophisticate, I think, Mexican police and different levels of police. We came with the federal police to Juarez, for example, and we know that the federal police, the way they are hired, the way they are approached, these guys are not, community police. I mean, this is people trained to control the mob, to take a public space and make it secure in a very strong manner. And now they're, asking people to stop their cars, and they're not trained to do those things. municipal police are the ones who should be doing this, but we know we're operating in very particular conditions in Ciudad Juárez, but it's not the way it should be done. It should not be generalized. I mean, the federal police should be, taking care of other issues, and we should bring more money, more training, more effort to local policing. I think the state, personally, I think the proposal for making a state police is much better than having the amount of municipal polices that we have today. But it's a long run shot again.
Can I just add one thing? Our topic here was Pillar 4, so we didn't go into the broader partnership that the U.S. government has with Mexico. But I just want to just put out there that in the last 3 years, or since even the last, I don't know how many years, but in the last several years since the Calderon administration has come in, there have been enormous gains made in reforming the justice sector, number one. Constitutional changes, state-level reform votes on all different kinds of things in order to make a better and transparent system, as I understand it. There are a ton of reforms that have already happened. The fact that there is the SSP, the Mexican Federal Police, is an enormous accomplishment. Mexico, over the last probably year and a half, 18 months, has captured or killed over 20 of the chiefs. They're not what we call the high-value targets, although there's some in there, but of the biggest drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. This has been unprecedented in any country, even if you compare it to who was captured and killed at the same kind of time period in Colombia. These are accomplishments that are kind of haven't been seen before. So I would say that there is a great sense of urgency overall on this partnership. Pillar 4 is new, as we just said, so Pillar 4 is there, but I think, in government terms, a sense of what we can do when we can do it has to be considered as well.
A gentleman on the right side.
Thank you very much. My name is James Patton. I'm from the State Department, the Office of the Coordinator for Reconstruction and Stabilization. I'm actually seated right now with USAID in the Conflict Management Mitigation Program. When I wore a different hat with the NGO world, I developed something similar or worked on something similar based out of Colombia for the Andes. And one of the big problems that we ran into, this sounds very, very much along the lines of the kind of thing that I appreciate in terms of the programmatic strategy, but one of the problems that we had was that the real recruitment pools for the youth are in the most marginalized areas. So a lot of this education reform, et cetera, where it works in semi-marginal areas, the really marginalized groups are hard to reach. And at best, the strategies tend to be sort of a keep them off the street model. And the kids that we spoke to, particularly in urban centers in Colombia, they said it's just not worth it to stay in school, to do these things, if what I'm going to get coming out at best is a manual labor job, an urban manual labor job. So we had a hard time convincing the public sector to get really authentically involved beyond just committing some money or working with what might be already youth that are high performing and bringing them into business opportunities they already have outstanding. So how are you engaging the private sector to really go in and commit to urban transformation and really trying to reach the most marginalized youth to show them that there is a better opportunity than just working with their hands on the street, road construction, et cetera, when they have drug traffickers coming and offering them consistent income and perhaps more danger, but a different sense of identity in the community?
I'm going to ask two people to answer this. One is Enrique, who's on the panel, and the other is Carlos Arce, who's on the second panel, but I think you need to address this question now. Enrique.
I will just give it to Carl now. Sorry. Just kidding. No, we were discussing this kind of stuff in the morning. I think the term the idea of social innovation is something that we have to tackle from the government point of view. We have to cross barriers, and we have to break silos from the government point of view and from the private sector to social sector in order to make alliances. We were just discussing this morning, for example, some examples of things that we could do regarding, for example, every time we come and recuperate a public space, there's the possibility to hire youth from the neighborhood to work within the recuperation of this public space. But this is not just, for example, you can do that with the temporary employment program, and that would just bring money for 6 months to this guy. We know very well that this is not enough. After 6 months, what's going on? We want to partner, for example, with the International Youth Foundation, with the federal public space rescuing program, with Youth Build that has a chapter in Mexico, to bring youth from the community, to train them, to give them life skills, to give them also employment, to give them working skills within the construction industry. For example, we're also partnering. I was mentioning later the alliance with the National Construction Association, or National Builders Association, to give them also training to these people, and then bring together NGOs, public sector, private sector, to work with a specific group within a specific community, and build for them a long-term vision of what they can achieve, for example, within this industry. We know that this is not the only industry we should work with, but we're also working, for example, with SCT, which is the Communication and Transportation Ministry in Mexico, developing strategies to give technology to youth, to train them to use technology.
Enrique, SCE?
SCT.
SCT, and that's the
Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transportes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there are areas of opportunity for youth in Mexico. I think construction is one of them. I think technology is another one. Also bringing, arts and sports to the community. Have a comprehensive approach to how we bring those kids into the table.
Enrique, thank you. Carlos, you have not got good. Thank you. A microphone.
I don't know if I can turn around and talk at the same time, but
stand up and hold the mic, and then we'll.
No, I'm fine. I think the question is very, very good in the sense that working with seed capital from USAID, we also have a little bit of a conflict. If we want to have X percent of our work or employability and entrepreneurship beneficiaries be employed at the end of the program, do you work with the most marginalized or the semi-marginalized? If we want them to go back to school in terms of combating the desertion rates, it's much easier to work with the semi-marginalized and not the extremely marginalized. I think there has to be some training taking place in terms of the type of indicators and the soft indicators that are making a difference at the community level with the most marginalized groups. Enrique is absolutely right. We have to find different strategies with regard to how to engage them. I think sports, the Aganar program with Partners of the Americas, recently with some money from Fundación Slim and the Clinton Foundation as well, that's one. But the education system as such is not attractive to them. So alternative education programs that emphasize culture, arts, sports, etc., would be ideal, and I think we're starting to see some support from that at the state level. On the employability side, again, it's difficult, but it's the most necessary group to work with. Not only there's a youth detention center that has una escuela de mejoramiento to reintegrate youth offenders back into society. We definitely have to work with them. They're the most at-risk crowd that we have, so we plan to do that. But we have to find out just different types of opportunities of engaging those more marginalized groups. You're absolutely right. You have to change the paradigm as well. They can't, in a neoliberal sense, envision themselves with the BMW, the wife. What kind of vision do we have for our more marginalized youth for the future? And I think we have to change the paradigm there as well in terms of what maybe not look at a gang as an obstacle, but look at a gang as a resource for social transformation. And picking up on something that was mentioned before.
Carlos, remember that you've got a full 20 minutes after coffee.
No, we do have to change definitely from repression to prevention and to anticipation. And to do that, I think the paradigm has to be one of conflict transformation and peace building, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
In good TV style, that was to give you a taste of what comes after the break. But I want to thank all the members of the panel.
Thank you.
Adriana Obregon, Enrique Betancourt, Kermit Moe, Susan Vatt, thank you very, very much.